All right. Welcome everyone. As everyone's coming in, Andrew Kehoe, our wonderful tech master of Zoom here, is bringing people in. Hang tight. We will be getting this webinar or community meeting via Zoom going here. So hold on tight. We'll get started here in one quick second. Appreciate everybody's patience. And I want to thank everyone for participating and getting registered. We're slowly letting people in.
Andrew, if it says my network bandwidth is low, is there anything I can do about that?
If somebody else is watching Netflix in your house, ask them to stop. That's basically
Nobody's doing that.
It's really hard to tell. I mean, if downloads and streaming video are the things that usually kill network bandwidth.
We're not doing any of that.
Okay, the Facebook is connected and we still got people coming in. So we'll give it another minute or so as more attendees join.
Great, thank you everybody for joining in. We're getting started here. We're letting people in on our Zoom. Laura Henson, great to see you too. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. Glad to use the chat box here. I do enjoy the chat function. That way, if you've got a great idea, we don't lose it. We just put it in the chat box. Yeah, generally, that's a good question, Laura. Laura Good asks, will the Facebook Live video be available after the meeting ends? Andrew, we've posted these in the past, right? Mr. Rosenberg, thanks for joining us. Always glad to see the Friends of the Library of Colonial Heights joining in, and folks at Orange Park.
Okay, I think we could fit a critical mass. I think we can get started.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. For those, everyone that are joining in, Andrew's going to continue to let people in as we get started. The question that came about that this is being recorded and it is on Facebook Live, and we will be sharing this again. So let me start off by welcoming everyone to our second District 5 and 6 community meeting. This is not our last community conversation or the only avenue for us to communicate. Councilmember Chenier and I and all our city staff will make ourselves available as we do for any other community or constituent issue. Please reach out to us. We will have another meeting of this type in January in this format. We understand that everyone has a different format or a better way to communicate, and we want to make sure that we're making ourselves available for everyone in their best space. Now, the purpose of this meeting is to update the community on the project and share the progress made on the issues that our neighbors have raised, as well, and more importantly, to build on the partnership with the community to ensure that the benefits support the adjacent neighborhoods and uplift our community. There's no doubt that this project has benefit for the region, but what is critical and vital is that the project have direct benefits and support the adjacent neighborhood, and that those are realized. With so many that have lost their jobs during COVID, and recently we've been hearing those calls regarding the struggles that families are facing. Let's make sure we create new opportunities for our neighbors. I want to acknowledge right off the bat the countless hours of our neighborhood association, community partners, labor organizations, and respective staff that have brought this conversation to this point, and to thank those organizations in advance for the future work in this effort. We know we've got a lot more to do, and we acknowledge that you're taking a lot of time out of your personal lives to do this. So we're going to get this going here and get right to the meat and potatoes. But first, let me pass it over to my neighboring district here, Councilmember Jay Chenier, for some opening comments. Good afternoon, Councilmember Chenier, and I understand you have a little bit of a bandwidth issue, so totally understand if you have to go off camera if you have some issues.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'm just going to do about 2 minutes here and say welcome to everyone. We've had some experience doing these in multiple forums. We want to continue having them with the community, but importantly, we want them to be community-led. And towards that end, we've asked 2 of our neighbors to moderate tonight, so it's not Eric or myself. Kelly Burns, who lives in Tahoe Park, and then Michael Blair, who lives in Oak Park. So I'm going to immediately turn it over because I am having some internet challenges here. But turn it over to Kelly and Michael. They're going to talk about what we're doing for the rest of the evening. And again, want to thank everybody for their participation. As Eric said, if we partner on all of this, we will be successful. If we don't, we won't. So we're looking forward to work with the community to make this the very best project that it can be. Kelly and Michael.
Hi, everyone. I live in Tahoe Park on 10th Avenue. Really happy to be here. We'll go over the agenda a little bit, and then just for the format, just really want to hear from everyone so we can answer questions. We'll be using the Q&A format, and then also the message, if I have that correctly. And so Michael and I can go through the questions and then make sure they get answered, and then just hope to have a really good conversation and make sure we have some follow-ups. So just looking forward to this and hearing from everyone on this call and working with all of you.
Right. Everyone, Michael Blair here, and glad to see everyone, so many folks attending today because it's a very important meeting. You may know me from around the Oak Park neighborhood, working with the different neighborhood associations, or even with the Sacramento Investment Without Displacement Group, or just different projects I do around the city, working with the city of Sacramento. And what's most important, I think, tonight is that the residents ask as many questions as possible. There's a lot of information out there, and we want to make sure that the right information is coming out so that everybody, is up to speed, up to date, and everybody feels included. So this is your opportunity to ask questions. So definitely looking forward to some really good questions. Ask the hard-hitting questions. Don't hold back, because that's what this is for. We want to make sure that everybody, feels like they're, up to speed with what's going on and in the loop. So I want to go over the agenda real quick. We're going to hear about some actually really good pieces. I think as I'm out in the community, I'm hearing a lot of certain themes, and they're around a lot of stuff that's going to be talked about tonight. So we're going to hear about jobs and workforce. So that's going to be very important to folks. Also, transportation and mobility. We're going to hear about just investments for Aggie Square and the community. And then also housing, which is definitely a hot topic. We'll be able to hear a little bit about that. And then as we get toward the end of the agenda, we want to open up for Q&A. And I want to make sure that we have enough time to do that. So make sure that you get your questions ready now. You can, through the chat, start to push them through now. And then at the end, we'll pick up and be able to answer as many questions as we possibly can. So thank you. Let me turn it over now to Mr. Bob Seeger. Bob, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Bob,
Bob.
this is Andrew. Just really quick before you get started, I wanted to take one moment to talk about the Q&A. There is a Q&A function. It is much easier for our moderators here to keep track of the Q&A. If you use the Q&A function instead of the chat, with everyone chatting, it can force the question up and we might miss it. Also, this is being recorded live, so there will be a Zoom version of this that you can access. And then there will also be a version on Facebook. That is all I wanted to add there. And hang on one second, we got to fix one thing in the background.
Thanks, Andrew. Keep us on track.
Mhm.
Sorry, I have to fix Jasline's permission so she can share your stuff there. Hang on.
Right.
Okay, it should be fixed, Justin. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just like to thank you, everybody. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Kelly. Thank you, council members, Geta and Shanir. And especially thank you to everybody who took the time to attend tonight. A special thank you to those of you here. Maybe I'll just say a few words first, if you don't mind. then we can put that one up. Thanks. Just wanted to say a special thank you to those of you who've put a ton of time and effort into this from the beginning. We've been, those of you who have know we've been at this community engagement process on Aggie Square for over 2 years now. And some of you have been there every step of the way, in addition to those who are there tonight for the first time. So thanks to you all. My name is Bob Seeger. I work for UC Davis. I've been acting as the planning director for the Aggie Square project from the beginning. And literally just have 5 minutes on the agenda. I may not even take 5 minutes. I promise I'm not going to throw a big PowerPoint show at you. But I just wanted to give you a sense, particularly those who are new to the conversation, of what the project's all about, where it is, why we're doing it, and then open up to the conversation that we're here for this evening. So just a little bit of background. Here's a brief overview. Phase 1 of Aggie Square, which is what we're talking about, it's about a 10-acre project. It's on the UC Davis campus in Sacramento along Stockton Boulevard, just north of Broadway. And when I say UC Davis Sacramento campus, I mean the home of the medical center, School of Medicine, the Betty Irene Moore School of Nursing, that is known together as UC Davis Health. So you all probably mostly think of it as the medical center. And we call it the UC Davis Sacramento campus. The purpose of Aggie Square is to grow the impact of UC Davis research and teaching, and to leverage that work to foster innovation and inclusive economic development in Sacramento. That's what Aggie Square is all about. That leverage doesn't happen if the university just picks a spot on the campus and goes and builds a research building that's just for us. That's may have been the way that it's been done in the past. The innovation and inclusive economic development that we're all seeking can happen when we create a place where industry and business and educational partners and community-based partners can co-locate with us on the campus, crossing those boundaries and driving innovation and investment in our communities. That's what's different about it. It's about co-locating partners from all of our communities of interest on the campus with us. So when I talk about Aggie Square, please keep in mind that the buildings that we're talking about are intended to be occupied about 50% by the university and about 50% by other partners that connect to the university's mission. So in order to make this happen, we're very excited. We've recruited Wexford Science and Technology, who's our investor and developer in the project, who has a track record of working with major universities and academic medical centers across the country to create similar knowledge communities, as they call them. So yeah, maybe Jasmine, we can put up the image of where it is, and I'll just show folks. Thank you. Oh,
Sorry,
this would be just
1 second.
Oh yeah, just the map. I can keep going, and if the map comes up, that's fine, and it's no problem either way. So rather than give you a detailed description of every building, I want to describe a little bit what's going to go on in these buildings and paint a picture to hopefully make the goal a little clearer. The biggest share of the Aggie Square project will be dedicated to new lab buildings, almost 600,000 square feet. So, okay, there you can see the map. And Stockton Boulevard, so the part in the different colors is the medical center, the UC Davis Sacramento campus. And you can see the hospitals in blue at the top. Patient care, ambulatory clinics are in orange on the right-hand side. The education core, School of Medicine, School of Nursing are in the middle in pink. And in the yellow zone, right along Stockton Boulevard, just north of Broadway, we're calling it the Collaboration and Research Zone. And that's where Aggie Square sits. And when I'm talking tonight about the Aggie Square buildings, I'm talking about the 4 buildings that are drawn right there. So thank you. And we can either keep that up or go back either way. So I just want to briefly describe the kind of thing that's going to happen at Aggie Square. As I said, in that little drawing, there are 2 lab buildings, almost 600,000 square feet, that will host work in the life sciences, in new technologies, and in engineering. One of the areas that's poised to take place in Aggie Square is in the area of what we call regenerative medicine. I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain the science, but it's particularly important in the world that we're living in now. Regenerative medicine uses stem cells and other strategies to develop therapies and cures for diseases that today have no cures. So as you probably know, last month, Californians passed Proposition 14, creating $5.5 billion to advance stem cell initiatives. UC Davis, right in this location, already has a robust stem cell research and development program launched by the first California initiative passed in 2004. So here's where Aggie Square comes in. Stem cell work is expensive. It needs continuous experimentation and lots of partners. Aggie Square will create, for the first time in Sacramento, shared lab space that can be leased by the linear foot for startup companies in this area to grow into successful, bigger companies and stay in Sacramento. In addition, in order for the research on new treatments and new cures to make their way to patients who need them, we need industry and business partners to innovate new biomanufacturing and engineering processes to drive down the costs of delivering these outcomes. So Aggie Square, in addition to UC Davis space, will have the innovation space for startups. It'll have space for those industries and businesses to locate near where our research is happening to drive those innovation and cost savings in biomanufacturing. That drives investment in the Sacramento economy. And Wexford tells us that 25 to 35% of the jobs required for those industries to run do not require a 4-year degree or higher. So Aggie Square will also be home to a new life sciences training consortium spearheaded by the UC Davis Continuing and Professional Education Group in partnership with community colleges, with industry partners, with community-based organizations to train local residents to be prepared for these jobs. I remember the first community engagement meeting we had in September of 2018, over 2 years ago. Cassandra Jennings from the Greater Sacramento Urban League said, if we're really going to bring these new jobs and diversify the Sacramento economy, we need to start early to prepare people for those new jobs in our neighborhoods so that they can take advantage of them. And that's what we plan to do. Because yes, we're over 2 years into this planning, but this is a long game. It will still be 2.5 to 3 years before the doors open at Aggie Square. And we plan on starting construction later in 2021. So I'm almost done, and then we'll get to the topic of the day. Like I said, I didn't bring a bunch of pictures of lab buildings. What's important to know is what's the kind of example I gave of what's going on in those, and what will go on in those buildings. And what's different about Aggie Square is that it's about advancing university research in service to the public good. It's about hosting industry to drive investment and innovation. It's about focusing on opportunities for people in our local communities and creating a place where all of this is happening together. And the example I gave is just one example of many that are taking shape, each with attention to the university, to industry, and to the community. I'll finish up here. There are significant other parts of the project. There's a lifelong learning building where we'll host training classes and public partnerships. We have a housing project in Aggie Square that I'll tell you about later in the meeting. We have initiatives in food and health. We have new public places along Stockton Boulevard to better connect the university and the community. So with that, I'll stop. This meeting is for you guys. So let's shift our conversation to focus on the ways that the project can provide value to people in our surrounding communities. Again, I appreciate everybody who took the time to be at this conversation tonight.
All right, thank you. What we want to do is, thanks for that, Bob, appreciate it. Also, we forgot to do, or a little earlier, is to do a test poll question. Want to make sure that the poll's working correctly. So just want to throw a question out there. And oh, it's already set up. So please answer the poll question. We'll see where everyone wants to visit once it's safe to do so. Multiple choice, or you can add an other. I know folks are looking forward to getting to a better place and probably already have plans in place. Take some time, answer that, and then we'll move on.
Michael, there's a couple questions in the Q&A that may warrant an answer right now. If there's anything you see in there that you or Kelly can handle.
Look, there is one, and let me scroll back up. Oh.
Can somebody answer the first one? What is the latest info on the proposed EIFD? Or we're going to get to that later in the presentation. So
Yeah, I think we've got a good block of time set aside to talk directly to that.
Okay, great. There was one in here that I don't see anymore. Maybe the person took it away. It was anonymous. Kelly, do you see any that we should answer right away?
Nothing that stands out. Looks like a lot of these can be addressed in the panels.
Okay.
I mean, there's one, how many people are here? I see the attendees are 78. I don't know if that's helpful.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think Andrew, we'll hold on the rest of these until we get to the end. So I think a lot of these questions could be answered just through the conversation.
Looks like we got
All right.
results for our poll.
Extended family wins. That's a big one.
It's a fun question.
All right. Well, thanks for that. We know the poll's working now, so we can move on. And we get to the end, we'll throw more poll questions up and keep it going. So let's go ahead and move on in the agenda. We want to go into jobs and workforce. So Bob, you're back up again to kind of lead it off, and then we'll let the other folks jump in and fill in the gap.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. I will just kick this panel off and take a couple minutes. Start off with what we've heard from people in the community during our engagement process, and then just a little bit about the approach that we're taking, and then we can hopefully get into a lot more details with folks' questions. During this process, in listening to community aspirations and concerns, we've definitely heard that people want us to focus on the zip codes for our immediately surrounding neighborhoods to create workforce development, job training, and job opportunities as the jobs emerge at Aggie Square. We heard that loud and clear. And as I mentioned earlier in my talk, we really heard that people want to be prepared for the new types of jobs that are coming, so that we don't get out of sync and have the doors open to Aggie Square and say we're diversifying the economy, bringing new types of businesses and industries and research, but not having people trained ahead of time. So we want to give attention to that. We heard a lot about the really importance of working with young people in schools, in youth engagement programs to get the younger that we can start getting folks exposed to these careers and on pathways, whether they're technical training or other types of training is super important. So, and lots of other things too, but I just wanted to start off with some of those highlights of what we heard. And then maybe if we could put up that next slide, Jasleen, about the workforce development approach that we're taking. Here we go. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but I just wanted to share this framework with everybody. Aggie Square, as I said, it's a long game. It's going to be a while before it opens, but we've heard so many important needs from the community. So this first column, here's a 3-part approach. Yeah, this is the right one. There's a 3-part approach that we're taking to jobs and job training and workforce preparation. The first one, where it says action now, as you know, I mean, the numbers for Aggie Square, around 3,500 to 5,000 jobs may come with Aggie Square. Some of those other employers. But UC Davis Health at the Sacramento campus already employs a huge job base. So our team from UC Davis Health Human Resources has really joined this effort, responding to what we've heard the community, and are putting together programs to focus on working with local CBOs in the community. We're just interviewing and reaching out to folks now through UC Davis Human Resources to improve the visibility. They're already doing lots of job fairs, but to accelerate those job fairs, to focus on the zip codes of need, to create more access to existing UC Davis jobs, to partner on readiness training for folks in these neighborhoods, so that if they're not ready for some of the jobs that come open, that we can forecast, collect data on the kinds of jobs coming, and help folks with training and readiness to get those jobs. So there's a whole team of people working in that first column. It's not really even Aggie Square. It's just the university bringing the resources that they can to the existing enterprise to try to respond to these community needs for folks in our immediate community. So that's a whole big body of work happening in column 1. Column 2 is the construction period. The first jobs to come with Aggie Square are building it. And as I said, we hope to break ground in 2021. There are anticipated to be about 5,000 construction jobs that happen from building the Aggie Square project that I've been talking about tonight. There's a very strong agreement that's taking shape between our Wexford's contractor and the Sacramento Sierra Trades Council, so that there'll be apprenticeships in these local neighborhoods. There'll be local hire targets in these local neighborhoods. There'll be all kinds of outreach around and engagement around these construction jobs that will start soon, so that people have the best possible access from our local communities into those many construction jobs when they come up. During the construction period, that's our chance to put together longer term workforce training and job training programs that are ready when the doors open. And so in the ongoing column, we'll be piloting programs now, and I want to mention a couple. I mentioned one so that they're ready, and we've tested them and piloted them and created the partnerships so that they can be sustainable when the doors open. Our continuing and professional educational group is leading a couple of them. I mentioned the Life Sciences Training Consortium to train folks for the life sciences jobs, and they'll be working with community colleges and industry partners, and not too long from now with community-based organizations. They're also looking at a model at UC San Diego to get into high school programs, to preparatory programs. They've got a great model in San Diego where they've got a really robust series of programs through their continuing education. And some of those are even set up so that the dues paying folks who can pay to take those training classes in San Diego, they've managed to set it up so that there are scholarships for folks who don't have the means to pay for some of those high school training programs. So that's underway as well. So there's a lot of detail there. There are big teams of people working on it, but I just wanted to let you know that we're doing this 3-part approach to the workforce development and training. And I'll pass it on to others because there's lots more going on in this space that people are going to want to share.
Thanks, Bob. I'll jump in. My name is Travis Sheridan. I'm the Chief Community Officer for Wexford Science and Technology. As Bob and others had mentioned, we are the real estate developer partnering with UC Davis, the city, and the community to build this knowledge community. Some may refer to it as an innovation district. We often refer to them as knowledge communities. And we do this all around the United States, and really excited to work with UC Davis and the Sacramento community to move this forward. When I think about the jobs that exist within a knowledge community, Bob had mentioned, I think in some of his earlier remarks, and I want to reinforce it, when we look at other knowledge communities like the one we're planning, that's being planned for UC Davis, between 25 and 35 or 25 and 40% of the jobs do not require a formal 4-year degree. Oftentimes that's upskilling, middle skilling, where we've partnered with local community colleges, continuing and professional education programs. A lot of the organizations that are funded through groups like CERTA in Sacramento to provide some of those training programs so that people can be upskilled. The thing that I think is really cool about a knowledge community is, while UC Davis will occupy somewhere between 50 and 60% of the space, the remainder of the space will be occupied by industry. And that could be industry with a capital I, large corporates, and industry that's comprised of small startups. And those are all potential employers. We run, in our other communities, we run internship programs. One of the things that we're really proud of is our talent nights, where on at least a quarterly basis, we work with the employers and the surrounding communities to make essentially job fairs or career fairs, where people can not only explore career opportunities, but meet with recruiters so that there are employment opportunities. We know that the jobs coming is exciting. It's down the road. As Bob mentioned, the project won't open until 2024 or late 2023. But through partnerships with local trade, the ability to enter into a PLA and have construction jobs really moving forward early is a great opportunity for people to participate in building Aggie Square, playing an active role, the procurement process, and working with small and medium-sized enterprises locally, so that through procurement, local enterprises can secure contracts either as primary or secondary contractors in order to create that wealth creation and those contract opportunities where they will be creating jobs as well. So I want to turn it over to Christina from the city of Sacramento to talk a little bit more about some of the city's role in this.
Great, thank you, Travis. Yes, so the city of Sacramento has invested $10 million in workforce development recovery programs through our CARES Act funding. And of the 29 programs, 10 of them are either directly located in or are specifically serving local residents in the adjacent neighborhoods and communities to the Aggie Square project. And so we're really trying to utilize this opportunity to build cohesion amongst our workforce providers. Sorry about that. Workforce providers, as well as meet the needs and understand where people are at in terms of the residents in the, again, adjacent neighborhoods and communities, and ensuring that they are getting upskilled for these opportunities, as well as getting placed into the jobs once they become available. So we are working pretty closely with Travis and Bob's team and all of our local officials, city officials, to ensure that residents in this community are going to get the services, the workforce services and opportunities that they are looking for.
If I can just highlight one of the questions here. How are we defining local?
Yeah, so we were advised, and Jay, you may have a thought here on the zip codes. And there are 4, I think, in particular that we're focusing on, 1720, 24, and 28. I know that those are the ones for construction, and those are the ones I think we're talking about, and possibly expanding beyond those. But that's where the effort is starting.
Yeah, and if I could jump in on that, the constant conversation we've had with community partners is 95820, 95817 are the adjacent zip codes. And then there's a sphere that goes out after that with 2428. There's, I think, back to the point, and maybe Jay, you want to talk about this, but there's benefits for the region, but we have to look at priorities of bubbles to make sure that we're providing clear pipelines for people in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so basically we're looking at the zip codes for at-risk neighborhoods, Oak Park, but then depending on the numbers of jobs, we want to go out to concentric circles of other at-risk neighborhoods like Del Paso, like Meadowview, like CV Circle. So really want to focus on where the jobs are needed most, where the training is needed most, and put our efforts there.
All right, let's move on now to transportation and mobility. And it looks like we have
really
a
quickly, I
poll
wanted
question
to
first.
share the results of the poll that we started at the beginning of that section. So it looks like ensuring jobs for young people now and in the future, although we also got some feedback in the chat around some missing items in here, which we've taken down as good notes, mainly focusing on local hire and ensuring jobs for minorities and people of color.
So Andrew, if I could say, I think that's great, and go back to what Bob said about creating pathways, working with our schools to make sure when those Aggie Square jobs open up, we have Sacramentans, particularly those from the local communities, as we just described, who are ready and have the skill sets to take those jobs.
Yeah, I
All right,
want to
thanks.
echo some of the comments that were made I saw on the Facebook chat as well, that definitely 95820, 95817 are those communities that are adjacent on Stockton Boulevard as the priority.
Can I just follow up on a couple other the conversations talking about PLAs and then about actually, like, there's lots of different jobs that are available, career pathways. How does that timeline overlap with Aggie Square? Like, when can people start looking at potential job opportunities or even K-12 pathway conversations?
So the construction, the PLA will take effect upon signature, and the construction, as Bob said, is hopefully next year. So those 5,000 jobs next year. On the pathways, we absolutely need to sit down and do more conversation with UC Davis, with Sac State, with Los Rios, and with our K-12 school systems to create those. So there are ongoing conversations that UC Davis has been hosting I know with Sac State and with Los Rios, we need to involve our K-12 systems as well.
Yeah, to echo that part, I know the Public Finance Authority member, Nicolina Hernandez from the Colonial Village community, myself and my staff have also reached out to our respective trustees in the area to begin that conversation to make sure that we're starting a pathway, a STEM pipeline pathway, and definitely making sure that it's in partnership with the other 3 educational institutions. Yes, access to this campus, but this is a good opportunity for us to leverage all of the educational institutions that we have in the area.
As well as
And
do
I would
training
just,
for all the health systems. It's not just about UC Davis on this.
All right, and we're a little bit behind on
right,
time.
okay, we can
I
take
just
it
want to
away.
move us along. We're a little bit behind, so I want to jump into transportation mobility. And then we want to make sure we have questions, or room for questions at the end. So it looks like there's another question. I'll answer that one real quick and then turn it over to Matt.
That's great. And as I get started, I see the poll is up, and just want to thank everyone so far. This next topic that we're shifting to, the transportation and mobility topic, is one that we could have either led from the city effort or from the UC Davis Aggie Square effort. We decided that I would kick stuff off. So good evening, I'm Matt Dulcich with UC Davis. And for transportation, we really wanted to think back to some of the feedback we've heard already. We know that from the early Aggie Square public input meetings, all the way through some of the details on the environmental impact report for Aggie Square project, we've received a lot of public input on details for transportation and mobility around the campus and in the community. We wanted to touch on those and really reflect on some of the upcoming items that are either in the UC Davis effort or in the City of Sacramento effort, or those that are shared. So first of all, just to go back and think about what we've heard so far, I think to summarize, the kind of key item that came across was making the community better and making transportation and mobility around the campus better, improving access for transit, improving safety, looking at the major boulevards, Broadway and Stockton, and thinking long-term about ways to improve those. I think that was a key concern. We know that a large project will bring traffic and potentially congestion, and a lot of the impact was on, and a lot of the feedback initially was, how do we address that circumstance? So we have been working on that, and I'll touch on some of those things. The other major input that we received was, what about making the campus itself more accessible? Is there a way for the milestone of Aggie Square and this planning horizon to look at a way to integrate the Sacramento campus with the surrounding neighborhoods? I think we know that the history of the hospital, the county hospital, along with the state fairgrounds, in some ways it created an enclave where the streets were not connected and pedestrian routes were not connected. So I think the prompt at this point is, can we do better? Can we look again across the campus and find a way to integrate the campus with the surrounding neighborhoods? So we're working on that. I'll touch on some of the internal UC Davis efforts, and then I'll pass it on to Jennifer and then Sarah to talk about city and Sacramento RT items. So for Aggie Square, the question of coordination and some of the detailed planning, we've looked at the frontage along Stockton Boulevard, and in collaboration with the city, realized that this is a major opportunity to shift the buildings a little bit away from the frontage. That a lot of the ideas for the future coordination along Stockton Boulevard could be helped with a clear effort to allow an opportunity for either more bike lanes, more bus lanes, and by shifting our Aggie Square buildings back a little bit, we've been able to meet that city request and really look to the future of coordinating the Stockton Boulevard frontage along the Aggie Square portion, and then also along the other portions of the UC Davis campus. So extending northward, not just to 2nd, but all the way up to V Street. So that effort is ongoing, but it really is a key part of this initial layout of the Aggie Square buildings has been to make sure that that's happening. In terms of other Aggie Square coordination along Stockton Boulevard, we are working on the detailed plans for a new signalized intersection at 3rd Avenue so that traffic entering Aggie Square is able to reduce congestion along Stockton Boulevard and keep as much as possible free-flowing traffic in that segment. And then the third item that we're really working on is that idea of accessibility of the campus. I think an upcoming planning effort we're going to want public input on is this idea of a safe routes planning effort so that throughout the Sacramento campus, the UC Davis Sacramento campus, we plan collaboratively with the neighborhoods to provide these safe routes, primarily I think for pedestrian and bicycle use, but also considering all modes, and try to integrate the Sacramento campus with the adjacent neighborhoods so that if there is an opportunity for a bike trip to use the existing streets in the Sacramento campus or to use existing bicycle paths, that can be accommodated and there's not a chain link fence blocking that, or that the crossing itself to get to the campus is safe and accessible and well lit. And I think that's an effort that we'll be rolling out in the next year or maybe more, or I'm sorry, sooner. So those three efforts, the Aggie Square coordination and then the safe routes across campus, are the three items that we're really focusing on. There's a lot of other details. Some of those are in the environmental impact report for the project, and others are items that we're still coordinating with the city and with SAC-RT. But that really is the overview. And at this point, I could pass it over to Jennifer to talk about some of the other neighborhood issues and some of the long-term visioning and planning that's going on for the Stockton Boulevard and adjacent neighborhoods. Jennifer?
Great, thanks, Matt. I hope everyone can hear and see me. My name is Jennifer Donlin Wyatt. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the city's transportation planning manager. It's lovely to virtually see all of you. It's been too long since we've been in person. So I wanted to quickly cover what we've heard. And I think Matt covered a lot of it in his intro. There's concerns around traffic delay, air quality, bikeability, walkability, and impacts to transit. And so you might have heard about some of the projects that we're currently working on, which includes our Stockton Boulevard corridor study. It goes all the way from Alhambra down to 47th. We've been working on that for the last about 18 months. Or in our final stages of design. That project includes some bus lanes. It includes about doubling the number of crosswalks along the Stockton Boulevard corridor, so thinking about pedestrian mobility. We're adding 23 new bus stop shelters for the transit users, making it a more comfortable environment, enhancing the walkability of wider sidewalks, and having continuous bikeways, which we don't have now. We're also doing a number of safety improvements at intersections to make it safer, including 4 protected intersections. So if you're a bicyclist, you're probably pretty excited about that, including one at Broadway and Stockton. But it's also our Vision Zero corridor. So for those of you who know, Vision Zero is our study effort to really focus on transportation safety. And 2 of our top 5 most challenging corridors are on Stockton. So we're working on that. This project is important enough to us that we're already moving forward. We got permission from council last week to apply for a grant to take it to the next stage, which is the environmental clearance. So fingers crossed for us that we can move that forward quickly. And then of course, the other areas that we've been working with you, we worked on Envision Broadway in Oak Park, if you're near the Oak Park neighborhood, which goes through the commercial corridor. We wrapped that up in March of this year. And we're also applying for a grant. We got permission from council last week to take that again to the next level. And then a couple of other Vision Zero projects in the area. So we're really invested in improving mobility, improving safety for all users, and really thinking about air quality and the climate. So I'm recognizing that we are over on our time allotment or plan. So I'm gonna pause right here and turn it over to Sarah with Regional Transit, and she'll pick up on the transit work.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah, and I work in the planning department at Sacramento Regional Transit. Regards to transit service to the project site, I do want to mention that SACRT is looking in the near term at making some headway improvements to Route 38, which directly serves the project site. So we're currently looking at improving that particular route. On a more long-term plan, SACRT has been doing a high capacity bus study, and we've identified high ridership corridors in our whole system, but specific to this project, Stockton Boulevard, of course, is identified as a high ridership corridor. So from that study, we've developed a Stockton Boulevard conceptual plan. And much like the city's analysis on Stockton Boulevard, we are recommending some BRT service on Stockton, which includes dedicated lanes and signal improvements, and also bus stop improvements. One of the top requests from the public and the community was an improvement on bus stop amenities along Stockton Boulevard. So we're really looking at taking that up a level. Next steps for us will be to continue working on the conceptual plan to keep the transit elements moving forward. And we will be working with consultants in the near future to develop a plan specific to implementing the transit improvements.
Right, thank you for that. Let's just with time. Oh, we have poll results. Active transportation, bikeability, and walkability came in a strong #1. So thank you for responding, everybody. And just because we're short on time, we're going to move on to the next section, which is investments in Aggie Square and community. And we have Leslie Fritchie to lead us off on that. Leslie, are you on?
Yep, I'm on. Hi, Michael, and I thank you all for joining tonight. I understand we have 70 little Hollywood squares of people here on the call today, so I'm encouraged by this level of participation. So thanks for coming out tonight. So I'm Leslie Fritchie. I'm with the city's Office of Innovation and Economic Development. And my role tonight is to hopefully demystify what is being asked of the city to support this project. And that's called the formation of an enhanced infrastructure financing district, or simply called an EIFD. And I do believe we have poll here, and I would be curious if you could participate in the poll, what you think a EIFD is, and look forward to what those poll results are. I'll demystify it as you're voting, so you can wait till the end of my presentation to vote, and we'll see if my presentation was accurate or not, or hit the mark. In simple terms, an EIFD works this way, and I do believe we have a little graphic, if that could be placed on the screen. Perfect, thank you very much. So basically, an enhanced infrastructure financing district works in this way. So there is an area, basically a line set around an area, and the property tax increment that is generated from the developments in that project are used to support the infrastructure in that area. And this graphic shows this bottom blue line is the base here, and that's the property taxes that are generated on the property currently. And then an EIFD is formed, and the tax increment that is generated by the projects within that area, and that's this kind of orange colored triangle, are then used for improvements within the district. So in the case we're talking about today, we basically drew a line largely around the UC Davis Medical Center campus, and that's the EIFD district. So the Aggie Square project and all of its new buildings will generate new taxes, and those taxes will then go to fund infrastructure within the district itself. So since we're the city, we get 23% of the property taxes that are generated by those improvements. So we are pledging to provide that 23% back into the project to fund approximately $30 million of infrastructure improvements within the Aggie Square EIFD area. In addition to that, there's been a pledge to take 20% of the tax increment that's generated and use that for affordable housing in the area. It doesn't have to be within the UC Davis Medical Center campus. It can be anywhere within the area. So this project will generate funding for affordable housing. So that's an EIFD in a nutshell. It is not new property taxes generated on your property or properties anywhere else, other than it is taking the property tax that is within the boundaries of the UC Davis Medical Center campus, a few other properties adjacent to it, but largely the UC Davis Medical Center campus, and using that tax increment for improvements within the area. One question that we have gotten a lot is, well, UC Davis is a nonprofit organization. How can they generate property taxes? Aren't nonprofits exempt from paying property tax? Well, since a large portion of this project will actually be used for private development, they actually pay what is equivalent to a property tax. It's called a possessory interest tax, but in all practical purposes, it functions like a property tax. And so it is those revenues that will be used for the improvements within the area. So I am turning it over to my colleagues, my council members, Councilmember Chenier and Guerra, I believe, to talk about, well, why should the city do that? Why should we pledge this increment into the project? Why does it make sense for us to make this investment?
Thank you, Leslie. And I'll be brief because, again, I know we're a little bit behind. The way I look at it is as follows. If this project were out for bid, if it wasn't tethered to Oak Park, cities would be falling all over themselves competing for it. We think that it's very important, the opportunity here for 5,000 construction jobs, 3,500 to 5,000 ongoing jobs, plus additional jobs in the health system, plus generating funds to really create a renaissance along Stockton Boulevard. We think it's that important that the city should make some investment in this. But I think it's critical to reiterate what Leslie said. The tax increment that we would be reinvesting is generated by the project itself. So it's not new taxes on anyone else. It's this possessory interest tax, or if you want to think about it as a property tax, 80% of which will get reinvested in the project. 20% of it will go into a housing trust fund, which I know Danielle Foster is going to talk about a little bit when we get to the housing portion of this. So this is a $1 billion project, and then looking at the city investment as approximately $30 million. Again, $30 million of tax increment generated by the project itself. If the project were not happening, there would be no tax increment. So with that, I want to turn it over to the next speaker, which is Doug Woodruff from Wexford. Doug?
Before we go there, Councilmember Chenier, there was a question there about what is the project area, and I wanted to make sure that this was clear about that 20%. And Leslie, to correct us if we're wrong here, but it's not. It doesn't have to be on the actual campus of UC Davis. We can actually use those funds to look at some of that vacant land that's on Stockton Boulevard that's not producing anything. It could also be for other housing programs, like maybe keeping our current housing quality stock that's falling apart, or helping those in the existing housing stock. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. Is that correct, Leslie?
That is absolutely right, Councilmember Guerra, and that's why we know that housing is important and a big consideration. So we do have Danielle, who is our housing expert, to talk about some of the programs that we are looking into as it relates to the use of that 20%. And you're right, it doesn't have to be used on the campus. It can be used anywhere within that area itself.
And let me add one thing. I know we're not going to get to everyone's questions here because time is limited. Those questions that are not answered tonight, we will get answers and we will post them for people to see. And if we have email addresses from everyone who has registered for this, in addition to posting them on our own website, we'll send those answers out to you. Doug, you want to go ahead?
I just also wanted to reiterate that as Councilmember Guerra mentioned at the very beginning, this is, we plan on having many of these sessions also in January. So we will make ourselves available in sessions in January as we talk through the project and these community benefits.
Thank you, Leslie. Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Woodruff with Wexford Science and Technology and the lead on our development team for this project. I first want to say thanks to Councilman Guerra and Councilman Chenier for their support for the CID process. We've learned a lot from it. We believe that we're creating a lot of benefit, not only for the opportunity to develop Aggie Square and bring new jobs to the market, but also to help with the surrounding communities and specifically some of the affordable housing needs that we've heard about, and certainly you'll hear more about this evening. I won't take a lot of time here, but the question was why? Well, it's really twofold. Number one, this is a transformative project that's going to require over $1 billion of investment. But that investment by itself couldn't get us there. We have a number of public improvements that we're making, and those public improvements, you've heard about some of them with the new streets that are going in, the new interchanges at 3rd Street. We're also creating almost 2 acres of public plazas and a public market that will be open to the community surrounding Aggie Square and utilized on a regular basis. And so, and the third thing is that we're going to bring some new innovation elements to Aggie Square that really don't exist in Sacramento at all. One of which is something we will call Innovation Hall. Innovation Hall will literally be a living room within Aggie Square that is open to the public, where kids who may be coming through there on their way home from school might want to stop in and hang out there for a little while, where entrepreneurs who work in the buildings come and get away and chat with each other, where folks who may have jobs over in the Health Science Center but want a respite on the way to either catch the train or do something can come in. So it is a public place, and it is for the public in the community. And so we feel like this vehicle is a really good way to make sure all that happens. And we're looking forward to it. And I'll be back to talk about housing with you in just a moment.
Right. Thanks so much for that, Doug. Looks like we have another poll result, and looks like another strong number 1. A district that uses new tax revenues generated within the district to fund improvements within the district boundaries.
Hey, good job.
So good communication on that. Thank you. All right. So our next segment is housing, another definitely hot topic. And we have Bob Seeger to lead us off in that one. Bob, you still there?
Thank you. Yeah, just quick high-level multi-pronged approach. What we've heard, of course, from the beginning, and it is that, you know, to the greatest degree possible, people want to protect against the rising rents that this kind of investment can cause in surrounding neighborhoods. We know Sacramento already has an affordable housing problem, some of which are particularly acute in these neighborhoods, which needs to be addressed now, and then Aggie Square can add pressure to that. And we know there's also, for our own work, a lack of new housing inventory. Quickly, multiple pronged effort that's emerging on that. You just heard probably the biggest one, which is what's emerging around this 20% affordable housing trust fund set aside from the financing district. So that's a big one, and we can talk more about that. There is a housing project plan for the Aggie Square site itself. In the ER, we analyzed for housing for up to 400 people on the site. The focus of that is for students, although we're still planning it, and it could expand to reach potential demand beyond that. But the focus is for students, undergrads and professional students in medicine and nursing who need to find housing, and hopefully we can take a little of the demand off, pressure off of neighborhoods by providing some housing on site. And then the third thing that we're doing is our government community relations group is also pursuing whatever other partnerships may be possible at the state level, at the federal level, so that we really leave no stone unturned to try to find partnerships that could help the larger collaborative here invest in housing opportunities in this corridor. So with that, I'll pass it on to Danielle and let her summarize what has been going on at the city.
Yeah, happy to go. Was Bob going to go next, or?
I think I was going to go next.
Sorry.
Danielle, you
Doug,
go and I'll
that's
follow.
What I meant. Doug, did you want to go next?
You go right ahead. I'll follow.
Okay. Okay, so I'm Danielle Foster. I'm the Housing Policy Manager for the city, and I just wanted to highlight some of the policy areas and the pipeline of projects that we're seeing and incentivizing along Stockton Boulevard. We've heard a lot from the community around concerns of displacement and potential impacts to the neighborhood. We are, as part of our housing element update, we're looking at the mixed income ordinance, which is an inclusionary requirement, which includes affordable housing as components of new development projects. In addition to that, we're looking at a no net loss policy. We've heard a lot about a concern of potential loss of residential units. So we're evaluating the option of having a no net loss policy for new residential projects so that we're not seeing a loss of units in this area. Further, with the specific plan for Stockton Boulevard, we're looking at a gentrification analysis and methodology where we can look at how gentrification has impacted the community over time, but actually creating a methodology so that we can measure it going forward to put measures in place to counteract any of the gentrification impacts that we're seeing, and working on stabilizing the neighborhood with that information that we get from the specific plan. And also through the specific plan, we're looking to both preserve the character of the community and provide for more streamlined process for new housing development and commercial space to continue to support the community along Stockton and in the Aggie Square area. Looking at housing projects that are in the pipeline, we actually have quite a few housing projects that are in planning and pre-development stages right now. It's over 700 units total, and almost 400 of that is affordable housing units. Bob mentioned the housing on campus for up to 400 people, which we've heard may be, around 200 units. And then the Donner Field site, which is an affordable housing site on 45th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue, probably 60 to 70 affordable units in that area. There's also a project in the planning process between 9th and 10th Avenue along Stockton Boulevard, which we're estimating, some of these are still in planning, but around 150 units there. John's Furniture site, which is down further at about 5025 Stockton Boulevard, looking at up to about 200 units there, primarily affordable housing units. And then of course the San Juan Motel sites, which is likely to yield over 100 affordable units. So we're estimating about over 700 units that are working their way through the planning process right now that we would hope to see come online. Set aside for affordable housing could be used both for projects like the ones I've mentioned that would further the affordable housing development along Stockton Boulevard. So we definitely have needs there between those three units with about three projects with about 400 units. We're also looking at programs because we think it's really important to stabilize existing residents through things like rental assistance, owners, low-income homeowners that might need homeowner repairs, and then also looking at home buyer assistance for folks that are in the area and maybe renting a house that they would like the opportunity to purchase in order to stabilize their. All of those program formats too. We've already submitted a few grant applications looking to seed some programs for this area. And as Bob mentioned, we're looking at opportunities to work together to leverage additional funding from the state, federal governments, anywhere we can to get those programs kicked off. Additionally, we continue to look locally at whether, as things stabilize post-COVID, if the city would have any capacity for future revenue sources to direct towards housing. And if so, if we could set aside some of that funding for this area specifically. So that's kind of an overview of some of the city activities around housing. And then I'll pass it over to Doug if there's anything you wanted to add as well.
Could I add something really quickly, Danielle?
Oh, yes, please.
There will be a second EIFD that will go down Stockton Boulevard. Those funds could also be used 100% for housing if that's the choice of the community. And then we're trying to talk to some of our partners in the county as well. They will be doing well off of the possessory interest tax, and we'd like to see if they would match what the city is doing on the 20%. So we're looking at other sources as well. We know that it's a huge priority. It's a critical need, and we want to make sure we can do everything possible. And using the Stockton Boulevard corridor as a pilot for how do we bring a renaissance to an urban corridor that has not done well over time with, as Eric said, over 100 blighted properties that are vacant right now. Thanks. I'll let Doug go.
Well, you stole my thunder, Councilman, but that's fine. Yeah, we in fact, in this last 4 months, as we've been learning about the challenges around affordability and making sure that gentrification doesn't is not a result of Aggie Square's development. We have, through conversations with Councilmember Guerra and Councilmember Chenier, we actually thought about this idea of a second Stockton Boulevard and believe so much in its importance that we're going to pledge up to $400,000 to get it started. So that's a process. It will take time. The other thing I wanted to point out, when Leslie showed that map with the chart with all those lines going up, we have a limited amount of dollars that we're going to take out of the EFID to reimburse for our infrastructure that we're building here. The remainder of that stays within the EIFD and can be used for other things like housing and continue to do. It's governed locally. It's governed by your representatives. So those decisions, if housing continues to be the highest priority, will naturally get the funding that Aggie Square produces, as well as what can be produced in the Stockton Boulevard EIFD. So I think it's a great program. It's a unique one that we haven't seen across the country, and it may be a model for the future. So Bob, I guess I turn it back over to you.
I think
Kelly and Michael get it, right?
Yep. Q&A.
All right. Go ahead, take it away, Kelly. Kelly, you there?
Sorry about that.
All
All
right.
right. Okay, so what we will do next is the real interesting part here. We're gonna go to our Q&A section. So let me just pull that up. All right, there are lots of questions, of course, around traffic. I mean, this is a giant project, and then parking for the neighborhoods. So, I mean, so it's two separate questions. Obviously, traffic will be incredibly impacted, but also people who live on the streets around. A lot of these old homes don't have driveways, and where are people going to park? So pretty simple. I wanted to see if, just looking at these questions here, does Robert Snyder, would you like to ask your question live? Not sure how to see that. Let me try pressing the button.
With all these Zoom calls that we're on, we're still learning stuff about
I have to go into the attendee list and see if he's in there.
Okay.
So hang on one second. He is. Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, I live right down the street from the Med Center, and traffic is becoming a real problem. Even on the residential streets, as T Street and Stockton back up, now they're going on the narrower streets. I live on Y Street, and especially pre-COVID in the mornings, a lot of people are shortcutting through our residential streets. So how can that be minimized?
Yeah, I could take a crack at that, and then Jennifer and Sarah, you might also have some thoughts. Some of our initial efforts for planning Aggie Square and the rest of the campus were to think about, instead of building more and more parking, to really think about reducing trips and to really think about what are the new modern techniques that we can implement, what's called transportation demand management, TDM. How can we improve our TDM program? And traditionally, I think we all know that, you know, one example of that is an employer who offers an incentive for people who don't drive, either paying part of their transit fees or doing some other kind of complementary program, is a form of transportation demand management. We have completed a new TDM plan, not just for Aggie Square, but for the entire Sacramento campus. And we're looking at implementing that aggressively, just for the common sense reason that all of the trips we can avoid have multiple benefits. If a trip is avoided, then it doesn't have the air quality impacts, it doesn't have the congestion impacts, it doesn't produce the cut-through impacts, and we don't need to then provide more and more parking within the campus for that trip. We are planning new parking and planning to accommodate what we think is the amount of needed parking with new parking structures. But before we build more and more, we're going to be more and more implementing our TDM program and trying to avoid those trips. Some of that will be things UC Davis can do on our own, either incentives or other programs for our employees, for patients, for visitors, for students. And some of it will be collaboration with the city, with SACRT, and with other partners. So that's the first part of that answer. And then Jennifer or Sarah, you might have thoughts on overall, you know, network improvements and avoiding cut-through traffic, those kind of things.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Definitely, that's something that we're considering. And so I want to use your example of Stockton and T. It's been an intersection that definitely has had some challenges. And we were able to improve that signal there with the new apartment building, the GEO that went in. So we did some improvements in Stockton and T. And we want to use technology to help improve. We're going to continue, Stockton and T. We actually have a whole set of plans that we'll be rolling out this winter to talk about improving that intersection for all modes. And our goal is similar to what Matt talked about. So we want to manage the transportation as much as possible and make it possible for people to travel by other ways than driving by themselves. And so we do that by providing sidewalks, bikeways, bus shelters, and in our case, providing a bus lane on Stockton. And then we want to use technology to help move the current traffic that's already there. So making those signal improvements, such as at Stockton and T and Broadway and Stockton, to help facilitate those folks that are still driving. So we're going to balance all of that. And as the project moves out and it builds out, we'll work with you to address your neighborhood issues.
All right.
And I also just want to add, this is Sarah from RT, that just kind of mirror everything that Jennifer mentioned as far as other modes. And also that SACRT is really enthusiastic about working with UCB on subsidizing transit passes so we can, you know, push as many folks over to transit.
And this is Bob from UC Davis. Just a quick add. There's a really robust effort at the Sacramento campus and coming up on the Davis campus to take advantage of telework. Everybody's, you know, who can is looking for ways to productively possibly work away from the office or from the workplace where it can be productive. And so there's a lot of work going on how to take advantage of that, which should be a big traffic reduction measure in the future.
All right, thank you for that. And we have an overwhelming list of questions, and I know we're running short on time. Folks just asking if anyone can stay on later. It sounds like both Councilmember Chenier and Guerra have agreed to stay on a little bit longer to answer some questions. For me, this is the most important part of the whole conversation, is really getting residents' questions out there. So thanks for your patience. Also, just asking with the responses, if we could do almost like a lightning round, just so we can get through a good amount of questions, but at the same time, make sure that you're given enough detail to make sure that we're answering the questions sufficiently. So I'm going to pose this next question. Actually, I'm going to do two. There was a question earlier about are the speakers representing themselves or their organizations? So I want to bring some clarity to that because I think I may have confused folks. When I introduced myself, I talked about many different hats that I wear in the community. And I'm here actually tonight just representing myself as an Oak Park resident, and that's it. I just threw out other hats that I wear just for transparency. And also I like to promote the other groups because I think they're great and I'm glad I'm involved with them. So that's for me. And then Kelly, you may want to speak on the same thing just so that folks understand kind of your participation in your role as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm resident in Tahoe Park, also in the Tahoe Park Neighborhood Association, have been involved with Aggie Square and Stockton Boulevard and a lot of other projects in the community. Really care about this project and just happy to be here and very interested in all these questions. There's a lot of really great ones.
I'm going to throw a question out there from Timothy Choi. And this one is kind of a long question, but I think it could be answered, summed up pretty easily. And maybe one of the council members might want to take this one. So it's, what metrics will law enforcement partners be provided as they police Aggie Square? How will these entities police this evolving neighborhood as it has impacts on mobility usage, public space, participation, etc.? And let's see, my screen just jumped and took my question away. Where did it go? Okay, my question just went to the other side. So let's just stop there. And if you guys can, either one of the council members can respond to that question. How will policing be enforced?
I'll give it a shot. I mean, and I would ask Bob Seeger also if he wants to respond from UC's point of view. We honestly haven't gotten to that point yet. There's so many issues on the table, and I know that both Councilmember Guerra and I and our staffs are spending considerable time on that, but I think it's a really valid question, and I think it's one that we have to get to, and we will get an answer. But I have not been involved in that discussion yet. I don't know if Eric has or if Bob has anything to say from UC's point of view.
We've had, interestingly, both Elmhurst and Tahoe Park, which are adjacent to the campus, have had both UC Davis law enforcement and the Sac Police Department law enforcement at their neighborhood association meetings. So we'll continue to have those conversations as they work together. But the campus itself uniquely has its own law enforcement entity there. So that, Bob, maybe you can continue to have that. And as law enforcement comes to the neighborhood for conversation, we'll make sure we have that with the neighborhood at those times.
Yeah, just to echo, it's a partnership, and the university does have its own police unit that has responsibility for campus land. So we'll make sure that that's adequately budgeted through the project. And I mean, one of the benefits of this project is there'll be more people, which I think is one of the important things for building safety in the corridor. So yep, it'll be an evolving partnership, and that'll be coming up before long.
And Kelly, you're on mute.
All right, thank you. For the next question, if Stefan Schweigarden, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, if he's here, I think that's a really good question. Are you available to ask the question?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
Oh, that's fine, Steve Schweiger. And I just had a question about what the plan is for with all the additional intensive development and residences, if there's a plan for open space and parks, and if that's planned to be integrated into multiple developments and kind of spread out, open to the public, or if there's kind of a signature park that's going to be created. Wondering if there's been planning for that.
So I'll take a little.
I can start.
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of that. First, I do want to acknowledge that part of the Aggie Square project has a significant public open space as part of that. And but as oh, sí, ahorita puedes ir acá, está allá. Sorry, he wanted his brown football. As part of the future developments, in fact, Mercy Housing is a good example. They're looking at an affordable housing development project further down on Stockton Boulevard. They're also looking at how to have a public park amenity that's open to the community as well around that development and not secluded from everyone. I think open space is critical. Part of the open space conversation is also in the Stockton Boulevard specific plan that we're doing. This is in conjunction with this project, but that's happening regardless of this project. So the Stockton Boulevard specific plan, we encourage people to be involved with that because we are looking at how do we create more open space so that it's more comfortable around Stockton Boulevard.
And I would just add to that, Eric, the complete streets work that we're doing, which is to make it more walkable, more pedestrian friendly, and certainly more bicycle friendly.
Yeah, just to follow on, as Matt mentioned earlier, we are setting back the buildings enough for those bikeways and pedestrian ways to expand along our side of Stockton Boulevard. And then per your question, Steve, on the signature open spaces, there are two signature open spaces that are being planned as part of Aggie Square. One is a market plaza where we actually are planning for a market pavilion that will open up the campus at the equivalent of what would be called 3rd Avenue and Stockton. Because we know when you drive down Stockton Boulevard today, there's big hospital buildings and big parking structures, and they can seem like barriers. So we want to make sure that there are people spaces along the Stockton corridor. And so this market plaza is the first space, and that'll open up to another big event space that's at the heart of the Aggie Square project that is we're going to call Aggie Square. And that's a large gathering space that'll, I think together these spaces will really add to the urban fabric of Sacramento and connect the university and Aggie Square much more strongly with people spaces to the neighborhoods.
All right, and next up, thank you for that. Next up, we have a question from Tiffany Wilson. Tiffany, are you still with us? Tiffany, okay, maybe Tiffany is logged off. Let's go to another question.
No, she's still here. She's just on mute. But if you want to read the question, maybe she just doesn't want to say anything.
Okay, let's see. I'll read it for you. In the EIR, UCD did not have good data on mode split of folks going to and from campus. Part of this project, will UCD be required to collect data to discern if the TDM programs are working?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, we do have, as part of implementing our new TDM effort, a requirement to monitor that TDM effort. And it's both a requirement and it's also common sense to know whether the programs are effective. We do need to monitor with employee surveys, with some road count data, and we need to be able to adjust those programs to tune up the programs that are really successful. And if a program's not working, then we need to shift it to a different program. So yes, we will be monitoring over the years and posting those monitoring results to one of our planning websites. And we're very eager to make that successful. But in these ongoing collaborations and discussions, there's always that opportunity for public feedback into that monitoring effort or ideas for new programs that the public might want us to test out. If there's examples that we're not trying, we're always eager to consider those and give them a shot if we can.
So Matt, what is the timing for those, that type of monitoring and report out? Is it an annual reporting out or?
Yeah, it will be an annual report, and we, right now the Aggie Square buildings are not yet ready to move into. So the first report would on the natural come out a few years from now. I'm hoping that we'll advance that and start an earlier effort, and that would be posted to our websites and sort of put out with a little bit of press release when those are ready.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, thank you. For the next question, Rick Henry has several questions, really good questions around housing, including student housing. And I believe that your mic is now off.
Is it on or off? It's
You're
on.
good. We hear you. We all hear you.
Okay. Should I go through all my questions?
Well, for the sake of time, I saw there's a cluster of questions around housing, and there's other questions about that as well. So maybe if you want to focus it on that particular issue for now, and then we have time, we can go back if that works for you.
You kind of answered the questions I had about housing as far as, gentrification, displacement of current low-income residents. So those questions were basically answered.
Well, then the floor is yours. Ask your other questions.
What? Oh, about traffic?
You have the floor. Ask your next question.
God, I can't remember. I had so many. Let me look.
I know.
Well, while Rick Henry, looks for his question, I want to go back to an idea that he brought up there about mortgage assistance. And I don't know much about what the UC Davis used to offer for mortgage assistance for their low-income employees. But I do think, Leslie, I think this is something we've talked about, how can we work with our local partners on mortgage assistance so that our neighbors and residents can help buy their home or achieve that effort.
Yeah, I will speak to that briefly, but if Danielle is still on, she can, because we are looking at, opportunities in using the 20% for first-time home buyer programs or mortgage assistance. So those are programs that have been offered in the past, and we're going to be revisiting them to see how we could use that resource in that way in the surrounding Oak Park and Tahoe Park areas for mortgage assistance, as well as assistance to renters as well. So we are looking at the whole variety of ways to support both existing residents, as well as giving people an opportunity to buy a home within the area. So those certainly are areas that we're looking at, Council Member.
Okay, I see my bunch of questions here. One was for Wexford. Wexford has built many similar projects like Aggie Square across the United States. So why does Sacramento have to create an EIFD to pay for the new infrastructure at Aggie Square? Didn't Wexford know from previous projects how to budget for the cost of new infrastructure without having the city pay for that infrastructure? The city has never paid for any infrastructure on the UCDMC campus. And since Aggie Square is on UC property, conversely, why isn't UC paying for the infrastructure, the new infrastructure, instead of the city?
Well, let me take that. It's a good question. And thank you for recognizing we've done this in a lot of places. To be honest with you, we've shared this with both the city and with the council members and with the UC Davis. In every one of our other knowledge communities across the country, we've partnered not only with the universities, but with the cities as well. And quite frankly, the amount that we are going to be needing here is less than we have gotten in virtually all of those other markets for two reasons. Number one, because the university is providing the land. And number two, because we feel like that the opportunity to lease up this space didn't need as much subsidy as it has in certain other markets like a St. Louis or a Baltimore. So it is not uncommon. In fact, it's almost routine that large scale developments like this that are going to generate taxes. And let me point out that while the city's allowing or is asking to make an investment with us, which we are really appreciative of, that's only 23% of the tax base. We are not taking taxes away from the schools. We are not taking taxes away from the county, so that the tax base will continue to grow. In addition, as I mentioned before, we're using a portion of it, and the rest of it's going to go for the community and be dedicated to the community. So I think your question's a good one. It just that there's some balance there from a perspective that these kind of economic development investments are done on a regular basis for projects of this size and scale.
All right, thanks for that. Let's move on to another question here. We have Dion Dwyer.
Katie, I have Katie next and then Dion.
Oh, Katie next. Oh, great. Okay. All right, Katie, if you're on, ask your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I put it in the chat. I wasn't expecting to speak, but I'm happy to.
Right.
I'm hearing a lot of great suggestions or commitments that are being made, related to housing and jobs and transportation. And I'm wondering if there's going to be a collective list somewhere at some point where, we can refer back to and say, okay, these are the things that UC Davis committed to, and so that we know what to expect.
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. Thanks for the question, Katie. And I know that you've been involved in this as well. The city and Wexford and UC Davis have been meeting with a number of neighborhood organizations as well as community-based organizations, many of whom have organized into a coalition called Investment Without Displacement. With them, we are working on a community benefit agreement. That agreement will be very public. It includes housing, it includes transportation, hopefully. It will include workforce development and a number of other things. IWD put forth a list of 13 issues, and we have working groups with those folks and the university in Wexford to try to come to agreements on how we can best support the ideals and the results that are being requested. We think that all of them are worthy, and we'll see where we can get to on that. The city will, so that will be published. Councilmember Guerra and I have both committed that we would not move forward in this project without that agreement. That agreement will be signed by the city with IWD and other organizations that are interested, in conjunction with an agreement between the city and Wexford and UC Davis to make sure that there's accountability on those agreements. So there's a lot of work that's being done on that. There are working groups with all members of all interested parties at the table, and we will work with that, and it will come to the city council at the same time as the EIFD comes to the council.
All right, thanks for that. And I know, Andrew, I'm not sure if you have anyone queued up next. If not, I'd like to maybe go to Dion Dwyer.
Yeah, Dion Dwyer is next.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for taking time on this important project. As a resident of Tahoe Park, I know we've talked a lot about the housing and the equity piece, and I appreciate that. But knowing that this will come on board post-pandemic, I have a real concern about our small businesses, and just would hope that we would have a conversation about how do we make sure not just employment comes from the neighborhood, but can we bring our next level of entrepreneurs from the neighborhood? And would there be some level of assistance to help bring those small businesses into the Aggie Square footprint?
Yeah, Michael, I'll jump in a little bit on that. Part of the conversations that have been happening also for the construction, and maybe Wexford can elaborate, is also making sure we're looking at our local contracting for the construction of that, and also working with our local chambers as well that represent a lot of the small and minority-owned businesses to make sure that that happens. So it is, I think, an important part of that. And we know that businesses kind of like Rossi's and even Momo's down on Broadway have benefited pre-COVID, unfortunately, from being able to get some of that work. And we want to definitely continue that happens in a formal way.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, for UC, I know this is during COVID, there's been at the UC system level, there's been a small business access program that's been created. It's brand new. It's only been out there a short time, but I know we're looking into that at UC Davis to see how we can deploy that in the near term, and we'll see if that can evolve into ongoing programs in the longer term as well.
All right, thanks for that. And I believe we have next.
We have Jesus Hernandez, a question from him, but it looks like his mic isn't working, so I will read the question from the chat. Does the affordable housing plan include affordable homeownership? If so, please provide details. If not, please explain.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think we've touched on this a little bit, and I'll put something in writing in the chat, but we're definitely looking at first-time homebuyer assistance, which would probably be a silent second loan to help fill the gap between conventional mortgage and the cost of buying a house. And then we're also looking at the repair program for existing owners, and then opportunities where we might be able to develop some new housing units that are focused on low and moderate buyers and would be provided at a lower purchase price. Covers the question.
All right, thanks for that. Next question, found one from an anonymous attendee, and they picked up on 5,000 construction workers, saying that there's a lot of unemployed people in Oak Park. When is the hiring fair? So someone can speak on maybe the process that's going to take place to identify folks local to work on the construction piece up front.
So we have a project labor agreement, and I'll start, and Eric, if you want to pick it up, that would be great. Let me tell you what we did with Golden One, because we're trying to emulate that agreement that we did with Golden One. We worked with community-based organizations like the Urban League, Area Congregations Together, and others to recruit folks from the neighborhoods to learn the trades, to be apprentices in the program itself. So we will work with the trades to continue to do that and bring in those workforce organizations, again, like Urban League and others, to make sure that we are hitting those under-resourced neighborhoods where the jobs are most needed.
And then to follow up on that, the partners here with the local building trades, they have the training and apprenticeship programs already here. Such as the IBW electrical workers and the plumbers and pipe fitters local union here that actually is in the 95820 zip code too. They're right here off of Power Inn. So making sure that we're training people for the construction job, because that's also a skill that they can take on with them for other construction projects. And yes, those are the priority zip codes, represent the adjacent neighborhoods.
And let me just add that when we did Golden One, the training was so successful, we were training more people than we needed for Golden One, and they found other jobs on other construction jobs in the area. And we hope to continue doing that as we rebound from COVID.
Awesome. We're making our way through a lot of the questions in the chat. There's a couple more Facebook questions. This is from Brandon Lane. If we could get a little more information about the Small Business Access Program.
Yeah, I'll find that out, how to get access to that, and make sure that is made available to this group.
All right, thanks for that. And then the next one is from someone from Facebook Live. Victoria asks, how is the updated climate action plan being implemented in this project?
I don't know. Bob, do you want to talk about what certification you all are going for in building the project?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different answers to that question. And Matt, please jump in as well. One of the biggest initiatives in Aggie Square is that we're planning it as an all-electric project with SMUD. So even though it's a very sophisticated lab buildings and multiple uses, that's an initiative that we're pursuing. So it's pretty groundbreaking in that regard. So that's one big climate action greenhouse gas action. Matt, there's the transportation side as well that Matt's been speaking to. And do you have other elements of that you would highlight, Matt?
Yeah, I would just jump in and point to the universities for the entire UC system, all of the entire 10 campus system. There is a policy, our sustainability policy that was approved by the regents that forces all of the campuses to achieve very aggressive climate action milestones. And one of those is the Climate Neutrality Initiative, which has a 2025 implementation date. So even Bob mentioned that we've planned all of the buildings to be very efficient. We're really looking at mechanical systems, lighting, and trying to reduce the amount of electricity we use. And then we're eliminating natural gas and relying just on electricity. And then we're implementing with SMUD the purchase of the SMUD Green Power Program. And then any emissions that are still remaining would be subject to the Climate Neutrality Initiative that's part of the UC policy. And those would be items we would seek to further reduce by implementing programs either on the campus or eventually, if we needed to, purchasing greenhouse gas offsets for those. So that entire circle of planning gets back to complying with the Climate Neutrality Initiative in the 2025 milestone. And then there's also a 2050 horizon and milestone for the travel, the commute greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the overview. There's for that topic, there's a lot of more detail to get into, but that's the overview.
So a question here for Doug or Travis here specifically on the development. A question had been asked prior to meeting about bioswales. Are you guys going to be using bioswales to look at stormwater runoff?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, it's one of the nice things is that the UC Davis folks have already created a number that align directly with the next Aggie Square. So we'll be using existing bioswales and then adding to it to make sure that we capture as much of the runoff as we can and hold it and repurpose it as needed.
All right. And we have hit so many different topic areas. There's enough to do a whole session on any one of these. So thanks everyone for the overview. We're going to take just 2 more questions. And then we're going to have, as Councilmember Chenier said, the rest of the questions that don't get answered will be able to get posted and answered later. This next question I'll pose is, again, an anonymous one. It says, what data are you using to determine at-risk neighborhoods, census data or other resources?
So,
earlier, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Councilmember, do you want to answer that? I can as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of measures that we can look at. We can look at the schools and look at free and reduced lunch. We can look at census tracts and poverty. I mean, those are, I think, the 2 largest metrics that we generally use. We can look at unemployment numbers. So those are 3 things that we can certainly use. And Leslie, if you want to add anything to that, you can. But I think those metrics are pretty well regarded as a good measure of neighborhoods that are under-resourced.
Absolutely. And I know that there are some other measures that are kind of folded into a metric called a Cal Enviro screen, which takes into a whole array of different metrics: poverty, unemployment, household income, and job or educational attainment and elements like that. So all of that will be looked at as we're identifying those target areas.
Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you.
Right, next we have Erica.
Well, thank you. And one is, I think, a comment that's been addressed a little bit, but again, just emphasizing as a North Park, Oak Park resident, we have a lot of med students and workers in our neighborhood. And for many of them, just that capability of biking easily to the campus through that neighborhood and connecting it on the other side through 35th and Broadway, I think is huge and impactful in keeping in mind those bike programs, in addition to just a lawn day on Stockton. And more access. I think UC Davis has done a great job of like zip cars on campus. So again, more of the jump bikes and that for many of the residents would be good. And I would follow up on Dion's comment. I think anything too that can look at the small business development along The neighborhoods will be critical. As we know, in our neighborhood, there's a shortage of a lot of the basic needs and services. The grocery store closed, some of those kinds of key things. So just something to be mindful of in addition to anything that takes place on the campus.
We agree. Thank you.
And
On both
to add
accounts.
to that, on the walkability, as you heard Jennifer Donlan-Wine mention earlier, we will, in a few weeks, we'll be talking about all of the Stockton and Broadway, Stockton and T Street, Stockton and Fruit Ridge plans for crossing the streets and walkability and biking green lanes.
All right, thanks for that. And this is be our last question. This is from Miriam Gonzalez-Sims. And it says, it sounds like there are some great community resources coming out of the Aggie Square project in regards to job training and assistance for small businesses. Where do residents go to find out how to access these resources and assistance?
No, I think that's a great question. And I think that what the city should be doing, and we've done this in other areas, is creating some web pages that are dedicated to Aggie Square that can provide those resources or pathways to those resources. And we'll talk to our folks about getting that up and running pretty soon here.
Absolutely. And I would add too, we can send the link to the Aggie Square website, and we're including now all the virtual job fairs and opportunities that are coming up from our HR group, even before Aggie Square starts construction. And we've realized too, through this whole process, that the university is such a big enterprise. There are so many different resources and so many ways to get at it. It's confusing for people. So we're going to work on really a community-facing portal that's not just web-based, but when we're through the COVID public health crisis, that where we learned a lot about where we can show up in the community as well. So a portal when people know to come to us, and then places we can go on the road in community to make the resources available and really simplify the pathways to take advantage of UC Davis. So appreciate the question. There's a whole team of people working on that.
Mary Ann Gonzalez-Sims, who, thank you for all your community work over in on the community of the Fruit Ridge neighborhoods. We're also working with a lot of great assets. The Mark Sanders Job Center, which is on Broadway, and then also the Charles A. Jones, which is on Lemon Hill and Stockton Boulevard, that are in the neighborhoods where we're trying to reach. We're pulling every asset we can with our employment training agencies and partners and also labor groups to make sure that we do the outreach we can. But I think what Bob mentioned is important, that we don't want people to chase after all of these locations. We want to make it easy and clear where they can go to find resources, whether it's on the construction side, health science side, service sector side, any kind of opportunity, making it easy for them to come to.
And Councilmember Guerra, if I could just add to your comments, the city does have a Sacramento COVID relief website that lists all of the workforce programs that we are funding right now. And we will continue to keep that information updated even beyond the CARES funding. So please go to the link. I did put it in the chat box for those programs that we have funded, those workforce programs that we've funded currently.
And I just want to add as well, this is a two-way street. So if there are specific ways that you feel you want to get information about the programs that we mentioned tonight, whether it's Aggie Square or other community programs, let us know, because we want to hear and be able to reach you in a way that is meaningful to you and that you get the information. So let us know, put it in the chat, a good method to reach you as well. So thank you for the question.
So maybe what I could do is do a couple of quick housekeeping things and then turn it over to Councilmember Guerra for some concluding remarks, if that's okay. So on the housekeeping side, we'll have a recording and transcript available, and we'll send a link to everyone who attended tonight. So if you want to take a listen to it again or share it, please do. We're planning another set of sessions in January, as was said. We'll spend more time on specific subjects in those sessions. So we're still working on it, but we may have a session specifically on housing, specifically on workforce, or specifically on transportation. or at least do breakouts in those areas. So we want to go deeper into those areas as we get more information. We will send additional ways to receive updates via social media, newsletters, and through neighborhoods. Again, I want to say first a couple of thank yous, and then I'll turn it over. One is to our two moderators, Michael and Kelly. Thank you so much. I know these are your neighborhoods and you care deeply about your own neighborhoods, but we appreciate you helping us get the word out on this and facilitating, I think, some really good conversation and some good information sharing. I also want to thank UC Davis and Wexford. They have really been good to deal with. And I know that coming into this whole project, there were trust factors, and there were trust factors certainly about the council and the developer, whoever they were, and UC Davis. But I think if we can continue to work together and partner on this, again, it will be a successful project for all. We cannot allow displacement of our residents in the community. So we need to deal with that. That's a critical issue. But again, looking on the upside, tremendous potential for this project, for jobs, for housing, for a real renaissance of Stockton Boulevard. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone who participated and turn it over to Mr. Guerra for some concluding remarks. And thank our own staff as well, Leslie, Allison, Danielle, others who are here tonight. Just couldn't do this without you.
Yeah, likewise. I'll start with that. I want to thank Coy Sachern, who, also my staff has also been reaching out to also the Little Saigon community, which one that we want to continue to make sure that they're not forgotten in this conversation along the corridor. And also the Alejandro and Cassandra and Madeline who communicate with our neighbors here. So thanks to the staff there. And then thank you to the neighbors again. You know, Michael and Kelly, both of you live on the corridor here, live adjacent to the project, and have some skin in the game here as neighbors. So thank you for your time and your willingness to participate. I want to conclude again by saying that this is just one avenue for us to communicate. Many of us are involved in neighborhood associations, our trade associations, our own nonprofits. Many of you are involved with the Sacramento Investment Without Displacement. There are avenues here for us to communicate. We want to make sure we have as much information gathering so we can make the right decisions together. And that's, I think, what this is about. It's about that partnership to get the right decisions. The education component, the STEM pipeline, the jobs component, addressing the brick and mortar issues of traffic and parking. That will happen. We can't let those pieces fall behind the wayside. And also making sure that we have transparency. One quick thing I will ask, Leslie, can we make sure and our city staff that the PFA hearings are posted online? I think there was a question about when they're going to get posted. And then we'll keep making sure that everyone understands the timeline here so that we're all functioning on the same timeline. I think that's the number one thing we want to do, is make sure we're all understand how we can participate in this partnership. I'm a neighbor here. I want this project to be successful for all our neighbors and to help our neighbors here. And I think that's the reason why we're engaged in this, because we don't want a project just to continue for the sake of the project, but for the sake of the benefit of our own neighbors and families in the area. With that, I want to thank everyone again for your time. Stay connected, stay engaged. We commit to do the same. And thank you, Sacramento, and thank you to the neighborhoods.
I add my thanks. Really appreciate it, everybody, for taking the time. UC Davis is becoming a better neighbor for all your efforts. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Have a good night. Stay safe.